verse 10. Men of bloodshed hate the blameless, but the upright are concerned for his life. What that basically means is, as the Living Bible says, evil people long to kill the godly, but the godly person prays and is concerned for the evil person. Attitudes are completely different. The evil person's attitude to the godly, he hates them. And I believe that's one reason why people oppose the message of sanctification. But if our attitude, if we are godly and our attitude to someone who opposes us is a test of our own godliness too. You see, it says here in 1 John 3:12, Cain was of the devil, and he slew his brother. Why did he slay him? Because his own deeds were evil, and his brother's deeds were righteous. And there's something that works up a person who is defeated by sin when he hears someone preaching about victory over sin. For example, if you say that what it says in the book of Ecclesiastes, anger dwells in the bosom of a fool. That when you get angry, you're just manifesting and shouting to the whole world, I am a fool. Did you hear that? I'm going to get angry again. I am a fool. You didn't hear it clearly last time. I'm telling you today now, I am a fool. And when a pastor hears that, who still hasn't got victory over anger, you can be sure that he'll oppose that message. Because it's manifesting him as a fool in the eyes of his congregation. This is the reason why the sons of Cain hate the righteous sons of Abel. Because their own deeds are evil, their brother's deeds are righteous. That is continued from the beginning of creation. The very first two children of Adam are like two streams of humanity. And that's what we see here. But the attitude of the God-fearing person is the attitude of Jesus. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Or as David says in Psalm 35, and verse 11 to 14, malicious witnesses rise up against me. They ask me of things I don't know. They repay me evil for good. But, verse 13, as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. I humbled my soul with fasting. I went about, verse 14, as though my own friend or brother was sick. I bowed down with mourning. But when I stumbled, verse 15, they rejoiced. You see, here's the contrast between the attitude of a wicked person towards a righteous person and the righteous person towards a wicked person. David says, when they were sick, when they were in difficulty, I was grieved. But when I had a problem, they rejoiced. That's the mark of a wicked person and a godly person. Because a God-fearing person says, I am my brother's keeper. He doesn't say like Cain, am I my brother's keeper? He's concerned. But a godless person, he just thinks of himself. Right, we go on to verse 11. A fool always loses his temper, but a wise man holds it back. Here's another of those verses that I was just referring to. A fool always loses his temper, but the wise man holds it back. We can read that here. It says, stupid people, verse 11, Good News Bible, express their anger openly, but sensible people are patient and hold it back. When we feel something rising up within us in our flesh in a certain situation, we must remember this verse. A fool lets it all out, like the psychiatrists say. Let it all out, and you'll feel more relaxed inside. That's the advice of the devil. But the Holy Spirit says, now is the time to fight that lust in your flesh that's coming up. Put it to death and die. Don't just keep it within. Be patient. Cool it and let it die. Let there be a dying. In the Old Testament, they couldn't understand this matter of dying. They could only go this far and say, a wise man holds it back. the Old Testament. But in the New Testament, we have something more. We don't just hold that anger back inside and keep it there. We bear the dying of Jesus there so that that disappears altogether. It's not just holding it back. A wise man just puts it to death and it disappears. Verse 12 reads like this in the Good News Bible: if a ruler pays attention to false information, all his officials will be liars. There again, we can apply that to a father of a family and to all of us as we grow up to be those who are older to others. If we pay attention to false information, in other words, a ruler should not pay attention to false information, or in other words, you should not believe everything that you hear. If you believe everything that you hear, and then you go about tom-tomming it all over the place, what you heard, one thing it proves is you're a fool. The other thing it proves is that you're not really an older brother or an older sister. You are not fit to be an older brother or sister to any human being under the sun. You're just a baby. Jesus did not believe everything his ears heard. He did not even believe everything his eyes saw, and that's much more difficult. We can get victory over the first part. All right, I'm not going to believe everything my ears heard. That may not have been true. But to get victory in the second area, that I'm not even going to believe everything I see. There may be some reason behind it. I can't explain it. That's really to become like Jesus. He would not judge by his ears or by his eyes, Isaiah 11:3. But with righteousness, he'd like to listen to the Holy Spirit. That's the place we are to come to. Then we can truly be examples to others who are younger to us, forerunners to them. Don't listen to everything that you hear. Of course, when older person is like that, all his ministers become wicked. We can apply it like this, that if a father is like that, his children are going to be like that. Think of a father and mother who sit around the table and gossip and speak evil about others in the church. They're going to produce a brood of children who grow up to be like that. And it's no use the father and mother getting angry with their children for being gossipers, because they've got to ask themselves, what have I been doing at home myself to teach them all that rubbish at the dining table when they were sitting around with me? Don't blame them. It's like a father who smokes and smokes and smokes, and then his child becomes addict to cigarettes, and then he gets upset with his child. Why get upset with your child? You're the one who taught him how to smoke. You're the one who taught him how to gossip. You're the one who taught him those evil habits. You're the one who taught him to be so selfish. That's good for us to judge ourselves in this area. Verse 13. The poor man and the oppressor have this thing in common, that the Lord gives light to the eyes of both. There's a lot of difference in the world between the poor man and the oppressor. Sometimes masters can be oppressors to their servants, and they forget. Who has given light to your eyes? God. He can blind you in a moment. And that poor person, God's given light to his eyes too. Yeah, be humble and recognize in all situations that God can judge you, even if in some situation you have power over another. Humble yourself and recognize that God can judge you very easily. Don't be so haughty and think that you are something or someone. It's good to have small thoughts about ourselves, even if we are elevated above others in the social structure of this world. Verse 14, if a king judges the poor with truth, his throne will be established forever. And that is in righteousness without partiality. Back to the same theme of no partiality. There should never be partiality. And I really believe, from all the experience that I've had in these last 26 years, of various types of denominations in this country, it is partiality by which the devil has prevailed. The gates of hell have prevailed against so many churches, because you go to most churches or most Christian organizations. Just see who are the board members. You'll always find they are the big shots in society who happen to be members there. Some of them may not even be converted. Some big shot. Or you go to some of these Christian functions and see who is asked to dedicate some hall or have the opening of some building. They'll call some big shot in society who may happen to be a Christian also, but he's not called because he's a God-fearing brother. He's called because he's the director of this or some big official, some secretary or some police official or something like that. He's a big shot and therefore he's invited. That's the surest way to destroy a church, because God will stay 1,000,000 of miles away from such a church where there's partiality. No. The king judges the poor with truth. His throne will be established forever, and God will only find himself in a church where there is no respect of persons given to a person's position or education or color of skin or community or anything. The fear of God is the only thing that is value in the true church. Verse 15. If the rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child who gets his own way brings shame to his mother. In the Good News Bible, it reads like this: correction and discipline are good for children. If a child has his own way, one day his mother will be ashamed of him. Beware of giving children their own way. That will has to be broken very early in life. And I think that danger comes usually with the youngest child, having their own way. When there's only one child also, there's a danger. But even when there are many with the youngest, because usually when there's a fight for toys, the youngest gets it. Or there's something, the youngest gets it. Gradually that youngest person, youngest child, begins to have its own way in almost everything. And we've got to be most careful with the youngest. Sometimes the youngest tends to be the darling as well. Tremendous problems. And if a child has its own way, one day the mother will be ashamed of that child. The other children will grow up all right, and that child, the mother will have to be ashamed. And that puts the responsibility on the mother there. You've got to take that seriously. It says the shame will come on the mother. And of course the father too. There's an example in the Old Testament. Remember, Solomon wrote this book of Proverbs, and he could have probably thought of his half-brother Adonijah. You read of Adonijah in 1 Kings chapter 1. He was a step-brother of Solomon. And we read about Adonijah in 1 Kings chapter 1, verse 5 and 6. Adonijah, the son of Haggith, the son of David, exalted himself, saying, I will be king. And it says about him that his father David had never pained him, never caused him pain at any time by even asking him a question like, why have you done this? Think of a father like that, who never asked his child even once, why did you do this? And that child grew up to rebel against the God-appointed King Solomon. Rebellion is sown into the heart by parents who don't correct and discipline their children, who allow them to have their own way. That's a warning for all of us. Let's take it seriously. Verse 16, when the wicked increase, transgression increases, but the righteous will see their fall. In some cases, we see their fall immediately on this earth. In some cases, we see their fall only in eternity. But one thing is sure, the righteous will one day see the fall of every wicked person. It may look on this earth as though the wicked are prospering, and it looks as though the righteous person is not really getting on. But one day, with your own eyes, you will see that wicked person fall. So don't envy him. Correct your son, and he will give you comfort. Verse 17, he will also delight your soul. As the Good News Bible says, discipline your son, and you can always be proud of him. He will never give you reason to be ashamed. Again, a repetition. Discipline your son. Think of the number of times it says in the book of Proverbs, discipline your son, and he will never give you reason to be ashamed. We really need to take that very seriously, brothers and sisters, as parents, because the spirit of rebellion is increasing in the world as we approach the end of time. 50 years ago, why even in the days when some of us were in school, we can't remember the type of rebellion against teachers that we find in schools today. There was a fear of teachers. I remember in my younger days when I was in school, You don't find that today in today's 10, 11, 12-year-old children. It's amazing. It only proves that we are approaching the end of time. The devil knows he's got a short time. The spirit of rebellion is rife in the world. That's why we need to really, in the church, protect our children from that spirit by disciplining them at home. Never allow them to speak rudely to older people. Never allow them to disobey father and mother. That spirit of rebellion has to be disciplined. Beware of allowing a child to have his own way. Discipline and correction will protect him. And he will never give reason for us to be ashamed, either in our family